The damp scent of earth and stone clung to the air as Lyra's boots crunched against the gravelly path leading into the cave. Shadows flickered across the jagged walls, cast by the small torches she had carried in from the outside. The air was warmer here, surprisingly so, and each breath carried a heady mix of smoke, minerals, and something almost sweet, an intoxicating hint of the unknown. She paused at the entrance, glancing over her shoulder at the dense forest behind her, its whispering leaves a distant echo of safety. Here, in this secluded hollow, danger and desire seemed to mingle in equal measure. Lyra's heartbeat quickened, not entirely from fear. Something primal stirred within her, something that whispered of surrender, of the thrill of crossing boundaries that daylight forbade. A low crackle drew her attention forward. The fire she had set in the center of the cavern spat tiny embers into the air, casting the walls in a warm, golden glow. Shadows danced with the movement of the flames, teasing the imagination, shaping forms that could be real or figments. She let herself drift closer, feeling the warmth brush her skin like a lover's caress. And then she saw him. He emerged from the deeper shadows like a figure summoned from her own desire. His eyes caught the light and held it, smoldering with an intensity that made her pulse skip. His movements were slow, deliberate, confident, each step a quiet assertion that he owned every inch of this darkened space even before she knew his name. "Lyra," he said, his voice a low murmur that seemed to vibrate through the stone around them. She hadn't told anyone she was coming here, had been careful to keep the place secret. Yet somehow, he knew. That knowledge sent a shiver down her spine, a dangerous mixture of thrill and apprehension. "I didn't expect you," she managed, her voice husky, betraying more than she wanted. "I knew you'd come," he replied, a faint smile curving his lips. He closed the distance, and the air between them grew charged, thick with anticipation. The flames reflected in his eyes, giving them a mischievous, almost predatory gleam. Lyra's fingers itched to touch, to feel the heat of him closer. But she held herself back, savoring the tension, the delicious torment of waiting. The cave, with its echoing walls and intimate shadows, seemed to cocoon them, a world apart from rules, from judgment. Every exhale felt heavier, every heartbeat louder, as if the cave itself had become a pulse that mirrored their own. He stopped just shy of her, so near that she could smell the faint scent of smoke on his skin, mixed with something uniquely his own, earthy and dangerous. "The fire suits you," he said, voice low, almost a growl. "But it's nothing compared to what's burning inside you." Heat flared across her cheeks, and she realized she could no longer distinguish where the fire ended and her desire began. The flicker of flames reflected on the damp walls, the shadows twisting and writhing, as if the cave itself were alive, watching, urging them closer. Lyra's breath hitched, a mix of fear and longing. She wanted to step back, to retreat to safety, but another part of her, a wilder, hungrier part, ached to move forward, to cross the threshold where restraint ended and surrender began. His hand hovered near hers, just a whisper away. The tension was unbearable. Finally, she let her fingers brush against his, a spark igniting that had nothing to do with the fire. A thrill of electricity ran up her arm, and her lips parted in a silent gasp. "You feel it too," he murmured, his thumb brushing against her knuckles, the faintest pressure sending shivers spiraling down her spine. This is only the beginning." Lyra's lips curved into a daring smile, a silent acknowledgement of the unspoken promise. The cave, the fire, the shadows, they had all conspired to bring them here, to strip away the barriers, the polite pretenses. Here, only raw, unfiltered temptation existed, and she felt herself falling willingly into its embrace. As the flames flickered and cast their warm, golden glow over the cave walls, Lyra knew one thing for certain: she had crossed into a realm where every heartbeat, every glance, every whisper could ignite a fire hotter than anything she had ever known. And in that fire, she wanted to be consumed. The warmth of the fire wrapped around Lyra like a lover's embrace, but it was nothing compared to the heat radiating from him. He stepped closer, and she felt the magnetic pull of his presence, the way it seemed to tug at her very core. Her pulse raced, her skin tingling where his shadow fell across her body. Every movement, every glance, carried a promise she could not resist, and yet she knew she should. Or at least, she told herself she should. He circled her slowly, his gaze drinking her in, tracing the curve of her neck, the line of her jaw, the subtle rise and fall of her chest. The cave seemed to respond to his presence, the shadows flickering, wrapping around them in an intimate cocoon. The distant drip of water from the stalactites above punctuated the quiet, a rhythm that matched the thrum of desire between them. "Lyra," he whispered, his voice low and deliberate, "there's something about this place, it changes everything. Makes us bolder." She shivered, not entirely from the cave's warmth. Her fingers itched to reach out, to brush against him, to feel the solidity of his body pressed close. But instead, she let her eyes wander over the firelit walls, tracing the shifting shadows as if searching for guidance in the flickering shapes. Her breath came faster, shallow, betraying the storm of longing within her. "You feel it too, don't you?" he asked, stopping behind her, his presence close enough to warm her back, close enough that she could feel the faint vibration of his voice through her skin. Lyra swallowed hard, fighting the desire that threatened to take over. I don't know," she admitted, though her body spoke the truth more clearly than her words ever could. Every nerve ending seemed alive, every thought consumed with him. She could sense the tension building in the cave, as if the walls themselves held their collective breath. His hand brushed the small of her back, feather-light, yet it sent a jolt straight through her. She leaned slightly into him, instinctively seeking the contact, needing the warmth. The firelight danced across his features, highlighting the intensity in his eyes, the subtle curve of his lips. His nearness was intoxicating, a heady mix of danger and desire that she had no intention of resisting. "Do you trust me?" he asked, the question a low murmur that seemed to resonate with the fire's crackle. Lyra's chest rose and fell rapidly. Trust was a word that suddenly felt loaded with promise, with danger. She hesitated, torn between caution and the irresistible lure of surrender. Finally, she nodded, almost imperceptibly, her voice lost somewhere between a whisper and a breath. "Good," he said, and the word was a caress as much as it was a command. He stepped even closer, his chest brushing against her back, the warmth of his body a tangible presence that made her knees weak. Every inch of her wanted to turn, to face him, to close the gap between them entirely. And slowly, deliberately, she did. Their eyes met, firelight reflecting in both, creating a halo of intensity that left her dizzy. He reached for her face, his fingers brushing a strand of hair from her cheek, his touch electric. The cave seemed to hold its breath with them, the shadows deepening, the flames dancing higher as if drawn to their energy. Lyra's lips parted, a soft gasp escaping her as she tilted her head slightly, inviting him closer. He responded immediately, closing the remaining distance, their breaths mingling, hearts racing in synchrony. The world outside the cave, the forest, the daylight, the rules ceased to exist. Here, only the fire, the shadows, and the undeniable pull between them mattered. His hand traced a path from her jaw down her neck, and a shiver ran through her, deep and consuming. Every touch was a spark, every brush of skin a whisper of the temptation that had drawn them together. She felt herself melting into him, surrendering to the magnetic force that had been building since the moment they first crossed paths in this secret haven. The fire flickered violently, and for a moment, Lyra thought the cave itself was alive, responding to the rising tension between them. Shadows danced across the walls, wrapping around their bodies like phantom hands, urging them closer. She closed her eyes, letting herself be consumed by the heat, the desire, the delicious uncertainty of what was to come. "You're mine," he murmured, not as a threat but as a promise, and she knew, without question, that she wanted to be claimed, to be drawn into whatever fire awaited them in the depths of the cave. Lyra's fingers found his, and she squeezed lightly, sealing a silent agreement, a pact forged in warmth and shadow. The fire roared between them, matching the rapid rhythm of their hearts, and as their lips finally met, tentative at first, the cave seemed to sigh around them, embracing the temptation it had long awaited. The kiss lingered, a slow, smoldering heat that seemed to stretch time itself. Lyra's fingers threaded through his hair, tugging lightly, testing boundaries, each gentle pull met with a response that made her chest tighten with anticipation. The cave around them pulsed with warmth, the shadows writhing across the walls as if in response to their closeness. Each flicker of flame mirrored the rapid beat of her heart, each crackle a drum of temptation echoing in the cavern. He broke the kiss only to trail his lips down the line of her jaw, nuzzling the sensitive skin at the base of her neck. Lyra's breath hitched, the sensation electric, leaving her tingling from the tips of her fingers to the small of her back. Every nerve seemed alive, and the cave, with its ancient stone walls and whispering echoes, became a conduit for the energy spiraling between them. "You feel it too," he murmured, his lips brushing her ear, "the way this place, it changes everything. Makes every touch more urgent." She shivered, unable to deny it. The fire, the shadows, his nearness, they stirred something primal inside her, a desire she had tried to keep buried, restrained by daylight and logic. Here, surrounded by the raw, intimate power of the cave, it was impossible to resist. Her lips parted slightly, a silent invitation, and he responded with a low, approving hum that resonated against her chest. Slowly, he guided her toward the center of the cavern, where the fire blazed brighter, feeding the intensity in the space around them. The light caressed her skin, highlighting the soft curve of her shoulders, the swell of her chest, the delicate line of her collarbone. Shadows danced across his features, sharp and dark, giving him an almost otherworldly allure. Lyra's pulse thundered in her ears, each step closer to him a surrender to the temptation that had drawn her here. He stopped just a breath away, his hands hovering near her sides, teasing, testing. She felt the warmth radiating from his body, a magnetic pull that seemed impossible to resist. Every instinct screamed at her to step back, to preserve herself from this irresistible fire, and yet, her legs moved forward of their own accord, drawn by the gravity of desire. His lips found hers again, firmer this time, the kiss deepening, claiming, demanding. Lyra's arms wrapped around his neck, pressing closer, matching the rhythm of his movements. The firelight caught in his eyes, reflecting a smoldering intensity that made her knees weaken. The cave itself seemed to lean in, the air thick and electric, as if it too hungered for the connection forming in its heart. A stray ember floated upward, casting a fleeting shadow that danced across their entwined forms. Lyra could feel the heat of it, but it was nothing compared to the fire that surged through her veins. Every touch, every whispered word, Every brush of skin set off sparks, a chain reaction that left her dizzy with need and longing. He traced his fingers along her spine, and she arched into him, gasping softly. "Lyra," he murmured against her lips, "I've wanted this, wanted you, from the moment I knew this cave existed." The confession sent a shiver through her, more thrilling than any touch. Desire mingled with a dangerous excitement, the knowledge that they had crossed into a space that belonged to neither of them entirely, yet in which they were utterly free. Her hands roamed his back, exploring the planes of muscle and warmth, committing the feeling to memory, to this moment suspended in time. The fire crackled louder, sparks flying upward like tiny stars, illuminating the rough walls and the shadows that seemed to flicker with anticipation. Lyra felt the cave close around them, intimate, secretive, protective in its embrace. The flickering light cast their bodies in gold and shadow, heightening every curve, every glance, every breathless gasp. "I can't," she whispered, the words breaking in a gasp as his hands slid over her sides, brushing with both tenderness and possessive heat. "You don't have to," he replied, voice low and sultry, "not here. Not now. Just feel." And so she did. Lyra let herself be consumed by the sensation, the fire, the shadows, the man whose presence filled the cave more fully than the flames ever could. Desire surged like molten lava, urgent and unrelenting, and she surrendered, letting the temptation guide her deeper into the heat of the firelit cavern. Their movements became a dance of exploration, each touch a question, each sigh an answer, the cave around them responding in kind. Time lost meaning, replaced by the rhythm of their bodies, the electricity of their connection, and the intoxicating allure of surrender. Lyra knew, even as the fire cast flickering light across their entwined forms, that this was only the beginning. This cave, this fire, this temptation, had much more in store. The fire had become their heartbeat, crackling and roaring as if mirroring the storm within Lyra. Every brush of his hand, every whisper of breath across her skin, ignited sparks that danced up her spine and set her nerves alight. She was acutely aware of the shadows, flickering and shifting like liquid darkness across the cave walls, and for a moment, she imagined they were watching, waiting, almost sentient in their interest. He traced a path down her arm, slow and deliberate, the tip of his fingers leaving a trail that made her shiver uncontrollably. The heat from his touch mingled with the warmth of the fire, searing, intoxicating. Lyra leaned into him, letting her body follow the magnetic pull, surrendering more fully than ever. "You're trembling," he murmured, his lips grazing the sensitive skin near her ear. "Is it the fire, or me?" Lyra's lips parted in a soft gasp, the words lost to the press of desire. Her hands clutched at his shoulders, feeling the taut strength beneath his shirt, the steady pulse of his heart echoing against her own. Every nerve seemed alive, tuned perfectly to the symphony of touch, heat, and shadow surrounding them. The cave itself felt alive, every flicker of flame, every whisper of wind, every distant drip of water amplifying the intensity between them. He stepped closer, closing the small space that remained between them, until the heat of his chest pressed against hers. She could feel the raw energy radiating from him, an almost magnetic force that pulled her inward, urging her to forget caution, to surrender entirely. "Lyra," he said, his voice low and rough with want, "I want to see you completely. To feel everything you feel. To lose ourselves here, just us, the fire, the cave." The words struck her with a force that left her dizzy, yet yearning. She nodded slowly, unable to form coherent sentences, unable to deny the magnetic pull that drew her closer. His hands guided her gently to the soft patch of stone near the fire, warm and surprisingly smooth. She sank onto it, letting the flames lick her skin with reflected light, feeling the shadows dance over her body like secret witnesses. He knelt before her, the fire casting a golden glow across his features, highlighting the intensity in his eyes. Lyra's pulse raced, the anticipation almost unbearable. Every movement was deliberate, every glance an unspoken promise. The air around them seemed charged, thick with electricity, each breath tasting of smoke and longing. His fingers traced delicate lines along her jaw, over her shoulders, down her arms, each touch sending shivers that resonated all the way through her. Lyra leaned into him, reveling in the sensation, in the intimate power of their connection. The cave seemed to respond to every brush of skin, the shadows shifting and twisting as though alive, wrapping around them, enfolding them in a secret, sensuous world where nothing existed but desire. "Do you trust me?" he asked again, voice husky, the words carrying weight, promise, and heat. Lyra met his gaze, the intensity of his eyes mirrored in her own. "I do," she whispered, and the single word was enough to send a jolt of electricity surging between them. He smiled, slow and knowing, as if he had been waiting for her to surrender fully. He leaned forward, lips finding hers once more in a kiss that was deeper, more insistent than before. Her hands roamed freely over his back, pulling him closer, their bodies moving in rhythm with the firelight, shadows twisting around them like silk. Every flicker of flame, every distant drip from the cavern ceiling, every whispering echo became a part of them, amplifying the intimacy, the connection, the irresistible pull of temptation. Lyra felt herself melting into him, consumed by the warmth, the heat, the undeniable magnetic force that had brought them together in this hidden haven. The cave itself seemed to hum, a low vibration that resonated through the stone beneath them. Lyra felt it in her bones, a subtle thrumming that mirrored the rapid beat of her heart. She gasped as he pressed closer, every inch of contact sending waves of sensation through her, the fire and shadows amplifying every caress, every sigh, every brush of skin. "Don't stop," she whispered, voice trembling. I want this." "Neither do I," he replied, his lips capturing hers once more, and the cave seemed to respond, the shadows deepening, the flames flaring higher, as if urging them into the fullness of the temptation that had been building from the moment they entered. Lyra closed her eyes, letting herself be carried entirely by the fire, the shadows, and the man before her. The cave, the warmth, the tension, it was all a symphony of sensation, a secret world in which nothing existed but desire, and she was ready to surrender fully to it. The shadows had deepened now, flickering across the walls in intricate patterns that seemed almost alive, reflecting the intensity between them. Lyra's chest rose and fell rapidly, her body humming with a combination of fire, desire, and anticipation. Every touch, every brush of his skin against hers, ignited sparks that raced through her veins like liquid fire. The cave's damp, earthy scent mixed with the faint aroma of smoke, intoxicating, heady, a private perfume that belonged only to this hidden sanctuary. He leaned close, forehead resting against hers, breathing mingling, hearts hammering in synchrony. "You're incredible," he murmured, his voice low and rough, vibrating against her skin. The words were simple, yet charged with a heat that made her shiver. Lyra's hands roamed over his chest, feeling the taut lines of muscle beneath the fabric, memorizing the strength she could sense but not fully see in the dim, dancing light. The fire flared suddenly, casting long shadows that twisted across the cave walls like dark ribbons. For a moment, the world outside ceased to exist entirely. The forest, the daylight, the rules, none of it mattered here. Only the fire, the cave, and him. The sensation of being entirely present, utterly exposed yet completely safe in this shared intimacy, sent a thrill through her that left her trembling. He brushed a strand of damp hair from her face, fingers lingering at her cheek. "I could stay like this forever," he admitted, his lips brushing hers again, the kiss slow and smoldering, full of unspoken promises. Lyra leaned into him, melting against the press of his body, every nerve alight with a mixture of longing and surrender. The firelight caught the sheen of her skin, highlighting the delicate curve of her shoulders, the soft line of her neck, the warmth that radiated from her in waves. The cave seemed to respond to them, almost sentient in its energy. A low hum vibrated through the stone beneath their feet, subtle but undeniable, a resonance that matched the rising tension between them. Shadows twisted more deliberately now, curling around their bodies like silk, emphasizing the intimacy, the heat, the temptation. Lyra could feel it all: the fire, the cave, the man whose presence consumed her senses, and she surrendered to it completely. His hands traced the line of her spine, moving with a rhythm that both teased and demanded, each touch igniting another spark. Lyra arched into him, letting herself be guided, exploring the delicious boundary between restraint and abandon. "You feel it too, don't you?" he whispered, the words a question and a statement all at once. She gasped softly, her fingers clutching at his shoulders. "Yes. I can't resist," she admitted, the confession a shiver that ran through her like electricity. The cave seemed to lean in closer, the shadows deepening, the flames flickering higher, almost as if celebrating their surrender. He pressed his forehead to hers, lips brushing along her jaw, and whispered, "Then let go, let yourself be consumed by this fire. By me." Lyra's breath hitched, a mixture of anticipation and the intoxicating rush of desire that coursed through her. She had never felt anything like this: the raw, unfiltered intensity, the way the cave seemed to amplify every sensation, every touch, every whispered word. She let herself go, hands and lips exploring, body trembling with the mounting heat of connection and temptation. The firelight danced over them, shadows twisting around their entwined forms, and for a moment, Lyra felt as if the cave itself had become a living, breathing entity, a witness and participant in the passion unfolding. Every caress, every gasp, every heartbeat was mirrored in the stone around them, the air thick with warmth, tension, and the electricity of shared surrender. "You're mine," he murmured, voice low, heavy with promise. Lyra's lips curved into a breathless smile, surrendering to the truth of it. The cave, the fire, the shadows, they had conspired to bring them here, to strip away hesitation, to leave only the undeniable pull of desire. She arched against him, melting into his presence, letting the fire and shadows, the cave and him, carry her fully into the intoxicating realm of temptation. And in that moment, she knew that she had crossed a line, a threshold into something far more intense, far more consuming than she had ever imagined. The fire crackled, the cave hummed softly around them, and the shadows writhed in celebration. Lyra and he were no longer separate entities, no longer bound by fear or restraint. They were fire and shadow, desire and surrender, a single, unstoppable force in the heart of the firelit cave. The cave seemed to breathe with them, the flickering firelight casting shadows that danced like living creatures along the walls. Lyra's pulse raced in tandem with his, every breath and movement amplified by the charged energy that filled the cavern. Each touch was a spark, each brush of skin a flame, and together they created a heat that no fire alone could match. He cupped her face in his hands, thumbs tracing delicate lines along her cheeks as his gaze held hers with a magnetic intensity. "You feel it too," he murmured, his voice low and urgent, vibrating in the space between them. This, Fire, it's not just in the cave. It's inside us. Right here, he said, pressing a hand gently over her heart. Lyra shivered, a thrill rushing through her. The sensation was overwhelming, almost too much to bear, yet she wanted more, needed more. Every nerve ending sang with electricity, her body aching with a mixture of longing and surrender. She pressed closer, letting herself be guided, letting him lead her deeper into the temptation that had been building from the moment she stepped inside. The fire roared suddenly, embers spiraling upward, reflecting in their eyes like 1,000 tiny stars. Shadows twisted and coiled around them, almost sentient, echoing the rhythm of their connection. Lyra's hands roamed freely over him, exploring, memorizing, surrendering to the magnetic pull that had drawn them together in this hidden world. He leaned down, lips brushing hers in a kiss that was both fierce and tender, igniting a wildfire of sensation that left her breathless. Every movement was deliberate, measured, designed to draw her further into the exquisite torment of desire. Lyra's hands threaded through his hair, tugging lightly, eliciting a low, approving hum that vibrated against her lips. "Lyra," he whispered, voice rough with want, "I've never wanted anyone like this before. Not like you." Her breath hitched, and her fingers trembled as they clutched his shoulders. The words stirred something deep inside her, a mixture of fear, longing, and an insatiable hunger she could no longer deny. She leaned into him, letting her lips brush his again, every kiss an affirmation, every touch a surrender. The cave seemed alive now, its walls pulsing with warmth, shadows deepening as if to embrace them. Lyra could feel it, the almost magical energy of the place, amplifying every sensation, every shiver, every heartbeat. The firelight reflected off the damp stone, bathing them in golden luminescence that made every movement feel surreal, heightened, intoxicating. His hands glided over her back, pulling her close, tracing the line of her spine with the gentlest insistence. She arched into him, gasping softly as the heat of his body pressed against hers. The cave seemed to echo their rhythm, the distant dripping of water and the low murmur of the flames creating a symphony that resonated deep within her chest. "I want you," he murmured against her lips, words that were both a plea and a declaration. Lyra's breath hitched, a tremor of anticipation running through her. She nodded, pressing herself closer, letting the fire and shadows, the cave and him, consume her completely. They moved together in a seamless, electric rhythm, bodies entwined, hearts beating as one. The cave walls reflected the firelight, shadows curling around them like protective hands, emphasizing the intimacy, the raw intensity, the irresistible pull of temptation. Every brush of skin, every whispered word, every shared gasp built a crescendo of sensation that left them both trembling, suspended in a world that belonged entirely to desire. Lyra's fingers dug into his shoulders as he leaned over her, lips and hands exploring, tracing, claiming. The fire roared higher, embers floating upward like sparks of magic, mirroring the heat coursing between them. She gasped, body quivering, every nerve alight, feeling herself lose control completely, surrendering to the pleasure, the temptation, the unrelenting fire of the cave and him. In that suspended, electric moment, Lyra realized she had crossed the final threshold. She was no longer cautious, no longer restrained. She was fire and shadow, desire and surrender, consumed by the man before her and the cave that had borne witness to their passion. Every heartbeat, every shiver, every gasp was amplified by the energy surrounding them, creating a bond that felt ancient, powerful, and unbreakable. As the flames flickered and shadows danced around their entwined forms, Lyra let out a soft, breathless laugh, a sound of pure, unfiltered release. He held her close, lips brushing her ear, whispering her name like a prayer, a promise, a vow. In that firelit cave, surrounded by heat, shadows, and the intoxicating pull of temptation, they were utterly lost and perfectly found in each other. The cave was alive with the aftermath of their passion, a quiet hum vibrating through the stone as if it too had shared in every touch, every gasp, every whisper. Lyra lay against him, her cheek resting on his chest, feeling the steady rhythm of his heartbeat beneath her ear. The fire had dimmed slightly, embers glowing softly, casting long, golden shadows that stretched across the walls, echoing the intimacy they had shared. Her fingers traced idle patterns along his chest, savoring the warmth, the strength, the way his body had pressed against hers in every moment of temptation. The sensation lingered, an intoxicating echo that left her trembling in the most delicious way. Even now, she felt the cave's almost mystical presence wrapping around them, a silent witness to the surrender and connection they had discovered within its walls. He lifted his head slightly, brushing damp strands of hair from her face, his thumb tracing a gentle path along her cheek. "Lyra," he murmured, voice low, husky, "I've never felt anything like this, never with anyone. Not even close." She smiled, breathless, leaning into his touch. "Neither have I," she admitted, her words soft but full of truth. The vulnerability in the cave, the way it had stripped away all pretense and left them raw and exposed, had created a bond stronger than any she had ever imagined. It wasn't just desire that had drawn them together, it was connection, trust, the unspoken promise that they had found something rare and powerful here. The shadows flickered again, dancing along the stone walls as if celebrating, or perhaps blessing, what had unfolded. Lyra let herself close her eyes, savoring the lingering heat, the soft brush of his skin against hers, the comforting weight of him holding her. The cave had been a crucible, forging desire into something deeper, something that lingered far beyond the physical. He shifted slightly, brushing a gentle kiss across her temple. "You're incredible," he whispered, voice soft, reverent. "Every part of you, every touch, every sigh, it's burned into me." Lyra's pulse fluttered at the confession, a rush of warmth flooding her chest. She traced her fingers along his arm, memorizing the lines and curves, the way he felt beneath her touch. "And you," she replied, her voice trembling with the intensity of emotion still coursing through her, "you've awakened something in me I didn't know existed. Something I never want to let go of." The firelight flickered again, shadows swirling around them, and for a moment, it seemed as if the cave itself had leaned in closer, embracing them, holding them in a secret world where nothing outside mattered. They had crossed a threshold together, a line into intimacy, passion, and trust, and now the aftermath was a soft, glowing heat that lingered long after the flames had roared their brightest. He pulled her closer, lips brushing hers in a tender, lingering kiss that spoke of more than desire, it spoke of understanding, of connection, of a promise to explore this fire together without fear. Lyra melted against him, letting the warmth seep into her bones, feeling safe even as every nerve still hummed with the energy of what they had shared. The cave, silent now except for the gentle crackle of embers, seemed to exhale, the shadows folding back into themselves, the air cooling slightly yet still thick with the memory of heat and fire. Lyra and he lay together, hearts beating in rhythm, wrapped in each other's warmth, knowing that what had begun as temptation had transformed into something deeper, something enduring, intimate, unforgettable. "I never want to leave this," Lyra whispered, her voice barely audible, almost swallowed by the cavern walls. He held her tighter, pressing a soft kiss to her forehead. "We don't have to," he murmured. "Not yet." Not ever, if we choose not to. This, us, it's ours. The fire, the cave, the shadows, they'll always be here for us. And in that moment, Lyra knew it was true. They had entered the firelit cave as strangers bound by curiosity and temptation, but they would leave transformed hearts alight with desire, spirits intertwined, a memory of heat and shadow that would never fade. The embers glowed faintly, shadows curling gently over their entwined forms, and the cave seemed to settle around them in quiet reverence. Lyra closed her eyes, feeling the lingering warmth of him, of fire, of shadow, and of temptation fulfilled, knowing that some desires, once fully realized, leave an eternal mark, one that burns brighter than any flame. And in the firelit cave, with hearts still racing and bodies still entwined, they drifted into a serene, trembling stillness, a perfect conclusion to a night of fire, shadows, and unrelenting, unforgettable temptation.